George Kilpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation. Just a quick check-in with 50th State Senate Representative John Mannion. John, good morning. How you doing today? And I hope that your start to the Memorial Day weekend is a good one.
It's great to be on, George. Thank you. I'm doing really well, and I wish you the same. I hope we have a great Memorial Day weekend. Last year, of course, a lot of people missed out on a lot of things. It's an important day. It's an important weekend, and I'm looking forward to it.
One quick fun question for you: how is the Senate different from teaching?
Well, I think to a degree, George, I'm still educating, and it's hard to shake that anyway. But it is exciting. I have fantastic colleagues from all around the state, and there's a little bit of people management in the classroom, and you got a relationship build, is what I would say. And I think that I've done that. You certainly have to be on your toes. I used to say that. Every day I walked into a classroom and I had 25 bosses, and then 41 minutes went by and I had 25 more. So, there's a lot of important legislation. I have a great team around me that makes sure that we're informed about that legislation. We have the background on it. And then, we're in a unique time here. So there's a lot of other things that we're trying to do to make sure that funding is there, make sure the right people are prioritized for vaccination, make sure that we get the word out on vaccination and make it as accessible as possible. So all that stuff's important. And, you asked me about teaching. There's some similarities, and I think that what I did in the classroom for years has been helpful.
Yeah, you talked about vaccinations. Let's talk about that, because obviously the more people who are vaccinated, the more the economy, the more the state can open up. And yet there are some that are reluctant. Are you happy with the state's approach to this COVID strategy right now, with the CDC relaxing guidelines, and then we quickly responded? And what can you say about our COVID efforts and how it affects some of the things that we're impacted by? Economy, I'm looking at rent relief, these kinds of things. So that's a packaged question for you around COVID.
Sure. Yeah. Well, a couple things is there's certainly important work to be done here. We just did, as a state and a county in Onondaga, something we had not done before, which is we had to adapt to a pandemic situation with lots of moving parts. And I think we had really strong leadership in the state and locally to do that. As far as the vaccination goes, it was a little bumpy early on, I think, because of the process and the supply. But then if you were going to be somewhere in the state and you wanted to get a vaccine, Syracuse, New York, really, you couldn't find a better place because we had great sites up and running. So, I know that myself and my colleagues are encouraging everyone to get the vaccine. I think, there's some history there, whereas there might be some concern. But I hope that we all agree that the best way to really get through this, and I think the state knew, they prioritized, they wanted to make sure there was access for everyone, that it was equitable, and that people were informed. And I do think the state has made a major effort to do that. I think we've done that locally. As far as the other side of it related to housing, we're getting through this and we're happy to see that. I'm happy that the federal government and the state have both provided very robust dollars for rent relief. It's not just the people who have been impacted that are renters. It's also, we in this area have a lot of small landlords. And again, it took a little bit of time. We wanted to make sure that we protected people, that we didn't make people's situation worse in the midst of a pandemic. So now those programs are getting up and running, and our office is here to help to make sure that they get it. And alongside of that, we got small businesses out there too who have been negatively impacted, and the support dollars are there as well. And we're here to help.
Talking with State Senator John Mannion here on the program. The session is about to end. What would you say are some of the major things that would affect our community coming out of this session?
Sure. Well, I mean, I do think what's important is that as we just went through this budget, that there is a lot of relief for small businesses, for renters and landlords, for the restaurant industry, for the arts. And, you know, I know myself and my colleagues in the Assembly and Senator May in the Senate, we had a list of priorities, and we feel like we were listened to in many ways as it relates to education and those other supports I talked about. You know, another area of this is we have great partners in the legal world that provide legal services, like, you know, Legal Services of Central New York. And collectively, as an upstate group, we fought to make sure that they had received funding, navigating through complicated processes like, you know, let's say someone receives an eviction notice and they have been negatively impacted. They may need help with that legally. We want to make sure that the organizations that do good work here have everything that they need to be able to help the folks through what could be a difficult time as it relates to unemployment or, like I said, housing.
One of the things that I know, there's a couple of things. Obviously, there is our community is rocked by some recent issues of violence, especially amongst teens. I know that has reverberated back to you, of course. What about efforts? I understand that there are some efforts to provide more support, anti-violence funding in the community. Can you say more about that?
Sure. Well, you know, as a native Syracusan, you know, I think we all agree that we have to do more. I tie violence when high rates of violence are often involve poverty, and we have that here, and it's well documented here. So we have to make sure that there are pathways out of poverty in the form of education and jobs, and then other programs too. But what is helpful, I have a great leader in the Senate in Andrea Stewart-Cousins, and she has acknowledged that this is an issue, not just here, but around the state. And there is grants that Senator May and myself are hopefully going to be able to distribute to local groups to really have local impact as it relates to anti-gun violence. And it's important. We're going through a difficult time. You know, our kids should not be in the midst of violent acts. We should not be losing our children. And we've seen that. I feel for and I pray for the families, because I cannot imagine what they are going through. And, you know, it's a problem that is not an easy one, and it's a big picture. And I know my job is to advocate to make sure our communities have everything that they need.
I know that access, we're seeing in many legislatures across the country limiting access to voting. And I know that with early voting set to begin here, I know that that's a concern that you have too, in terms of early voting and the limitations that have been placed on that. What can be done what are you doing to make sure that there's not limited access to early voting?
Sure. Well, I think, you know, we've only had a couple of years here of early voting sessions, and I think people have learned about it. And then we had the situation we had last year. People really found out about what early voting was all about. And early voting is set up to make it so it's easy, so that you can just walk through the door and go vote when it works for you. And it was absolutely necessary and fortunate that we had it in place already and people utilized it. But people were waiting in lines for hours. So, you know, I would hope that in Onondaga County, you know, we expand the number of sites. They have the authority to be able to do that. There's also issues across the state. So there are bills in the legislature that set a minimum number of, so if you have, for every 35,000 registered voters, there would be an early voting site for each one. And, you know, that is an active piece of legislation that could get over the line by the end. It's carried by Senator Janaris. I'm a co-sponsor. I support that. That would expand the number of sites in a county like Onondaga to 9. Cayuga County, just for numbers purposes, not to bore anyone, but Onondaga County, 460,000 residents, 6 voting sites. Right next door, I proudly represent parts of the county of Cayuga. They only have 75,000 residents. They have 3 early voting sites. So 75,000 for 3, 460,000 for 6. I think people are going to use early voting moving forward, regardless of the year. I think they know that it works. And we just want to make sure that we don't do some of the things that are happening in other states. We do not want to make it harder to vote.
Quickly before we go, I wanted to ask about I-81 and where you think we are with that and the impact that it can have, particularly on the area near Dr. King's school and the concerns that the neighborhood has about whatever that final decision is. What can you say about that?
Right. Well, I do believe in my conversations and what has been portrayed out there that we're moving forward with the community grid option. And I think that it's well documented what happened to that community in the 15th ward when 81 came through. And we have similar stories in other cities. So, I think it's going to be a positive impact. I think that just the infrastructure project itself is going to be a huge boost locally. And I think it's an exciting time to do it. So I walked into this world of politics as that discussion was occurring. I try to be pragmatic in all of my actions. I think the pragmatic move here is the community grid option, not just because it's an option that may undo some of the things that were hurtful in the past, but also that it's what's going to happen. So let's get behind it. I know at the federal and state level, we have that support, and I think it's time.
Quickly, there are some floating modifications of this plan out there. You're hearing some things, we thought about a tunnel that's not going to work. There's even talk about an keep the highway, but raise it significantly higher. You in favor of that?
So, really, I think we're down a road where the community grid is at a point where I think it's going to move forward. I do think that some of the things that we're maybe trying to prevent, like what these additional proposed projects would actually create a very large footprint impact still in the area that we're talking about. So this sort of opening up of land to help unite the city and the university, which is one positive aspect, I believe, of the community grid plan. I think we'd lose some of that. So, I'm supportive of many of the local leaders who have also stated that this is where we're going to go. And that's where I think we are.
State Senator John Mannion, 50th Senate District. Don't be a stranger. We hope to see you soon. And again, have a great rest of your Memorial Day weekend.
You too. Thank you for everything you do, George. I appreciate you having me on.
All right, you take care. Inspiration for the nation.